Hi, I'm Chris Howard. I'm the Global Chief of Research at Gartner. Thanks for taking some time to listen to the advice that we have around AI and related subjects. Hope you find it interesting. This is an astonishing number. Our forecasts show that between now and 27, $3 trillion will be spent on AI. It's an enormous amount of money, and not just on generative AI, to be clear. This is all of AI that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But this level of investment, my forecast team has never seen. The closest things were the adoption of the iPad, interestingly. So not just mobile, but the iPad specifically. It had a similar kind of flow, like senior executives were using iPads for their own productivity. Same is true with AI. So there's that motion that's happening there. So it was like the internet, but the difference with the introduction of the browser is it took 30 years for this to play out. This is 3 years. So it's an order of magnitude faster. And again, a lot of that money will be wasted. And we're sort of a third of the way through this story right now. But that's just the nature of economics, right? When something new comes along that requires investment, you burn a lot of fuel in that beginning phase. Think of like Carlotta Perez's S-curves. You spend a lot in it until it finally gains a momentum of its own. And then you don't have to spend as much fuel. And so we're in that first third of that right now. And the complexity of this is that it keeps restarting. Like you hope that simply something would trigger and then it simply finds that spot, but it keeps re-triggering because innovation is happening so quickly. Like every week there's something new. It's really, really hard to keep track of. And so it's, again, unlike anything that we've seen. All right, so I told you that the AI story has evolved. Last year, the emphasis a lot was on ChatGPT. ChatGPT is essentially a vendor product now. Okay, it's a vendor product from OpenAI. Microsoft has a funding relationship with them. And so as that started to happen, people's understanding of the space started to grow. So ChatGPT is a class of generative AI. GPT stands for, of course I say I'm going to forget it now, aren't I? Generative Preform Transformer. So basically what it does, all a GPT is a predictor of something. It predicts the order of words. And it's trained on so much data that it's really, really, really good at it. And so if you can give it a sentence with a missing word, it has a pretty good probability of understanding what that word is. And it's right so much of the time that it feels really human. But when it's wrong, it's like really wrong. When we first started experimenting with back in November of 22, my analysts, being curious people, said, well, write an obituary for me in the style of Wikipedia, just to see how much they would get. No, not an obituary, excuse me, a bio. I just gave away the punchline. Because what happened is it would write a pretty realistic bio of them with pretty good detail and a few mistakes, but in every case, it would also write an obituary for them. Always. Why? Because they asked it to do in the style of Wikipedia, and most Wikipedia bio entries have an obituary. And so it thought, well, this is a missing thing, I'm just going to make it up. I'm just going to put it in there because that's the next chunk that would come. I'll predict the chunks. And so it's that prediction machine that is really the magic behind the thing. But it can predict other things. It can predict the order of Lego blocks and how they fit together, which is where I showed you in the beginning. It can predict how pieces of a policy fit together. So one of the pieces of work that I do is with the big insurance company AXA in Europe, and they are doing what's called a computable contract study. So they're taking all of their insurance contract language and converting it into code, and so that they can recombine that for highly personalized policies, for which I think there's application in government as well, in terms of policy language. But one of the interesting things that happened there is when they converted it, they found mistakes in the language. They were able to test the code in different ways and actually find holes in logic or nested things within the policy language that then they fixed. And so it had this sort of interesting thing, but it was able to predict the reorganization and combinations of policy within contract language. Some things are allowed to be together and some things aren't, and it understands that. So all of the magic that we think of here that makes it appear human is the fact that it predicts the order of stuff. That's accomplished through LLMs, which are large language models, and prompt engineering, which is the way you ask the questions. So people are thinking more about that. What's happening now is that generative AI is settling into the overall stack of AI. The message here is this, that these AI functions that are the dark blue capabilities, and it's oversimplified, I realize, have been around for 50 years. in some form or another, and have been maturing over the last 3 decades. Like natural language processing is a very, very mature discipline. Image recognition as well. I think back to the time I was working on Stanford campus in around 2003-4, so 20 years ago. And at that time we had all the math. What we didn't have was the compute. So to actually ingest the trillions of parameters of data and all of the images of cats that you could possibly find took a lot more compute power than we had. And so it took evolution within the computing space, things called graphic processing units or GPUs and other things that are coming that actually created the computing environment where you could make these things real. And that's a big part of why this feels new to a lot of people, because it's that made it useful, that sort of brought it to the public view. But you're building on top of things that have a long line of maturity that are part of them and probably are in use across multiple agencies and departments already. Things like fraud detection, anomaly detection, those types of things where you have masses of data where you're using machine learning to understand the patterns in them, that's not a new technique. What's new is the ability to ask it a question. So in the case of the AXA policy stuff, not only is it creating new personalized policy, but a policyholder can take a picture of something and say, this weird thing just happened, am I covered? And then the prompt, it actually gives them the ability to talk to their policy in a natural kind of human way. The mistake we sometimes make as we're building policies and services is that we expect the people that we're offering those to thoroughly understand them as if they work with them every day, like we do. Fact is, for like an insurance claim, they maybe do it once or twice. Life insurance, once. Okay. And so as we're designing better policies and processes and services for these people, you need to think about what's the natural way that they want to communicate with this stuff. And this becomes a way to do it. So sitting on top of capabilities, it is a more natural human way into it. Thanks for watching, and again, I hope you found this useful and interesting for the work that you're doing in Canada.